Lights, camera, action. This is the Red Carpet Podcast with your hosts, Luke Andersen and Dane Salmons. Hello once again and welcome back to the Red Carpet Podcast. I am Dane Salmons and I'm joined as always by my co-host, Luke Andersen.
Hi. Hello.
Hello. Are you ready for this week?
Oh yeah. I am very ready for this week.
This is gonna be a really fun episode. Gonna try our best to not ruin any potential future job offerings.
Yes. Yes. We there's a long track record of people on podcasts saying bad things about racial stuff. So our whole goal is to not say any sort of racist garbage, which, you know, it's not in my nature.
Yeah.
So that's the plan.
Not in my nature either. And it's less like, and it's less about like not just like racist garbage.
Yeah.
But also just the fact that we're reviewing the Netflix film Dolemite Is My Name this week.
Absolutely.
And I said as soon as that movie ended, this is going to be the hardest movie to review because it is a movie about a comedian that his whole focus is just vulgar, raunchy, dirty comedy. And it's like, how do you like discuss or quote things from this movie without like ruining every future job opportunity you get?
Yeah, it's something where it's such a, you know, he was an icon and his comedy was iconic, and I think it's about, you know, I also had the thought of just watching it. I was like, you know what? Like, there are going to be people who are like, that was so raunchy. I can't believe that they, you know, had all this stuff in this movie. And it's like, that movie could not have been done any other way. Exactly. Like, that was his character. It's a biopic.
It was. That was who he was. So it had to be done that way.
Yeah.
And so if you watched last week, you might be aware that we mentioned that we were going to watch and review the film The Irishman. Obviously, things did not work out, but we'll talk about that a little more later, right before we get into Dolemite. But first, let's talk about a few like industry news and a few like little announcements that happened this week.
Totally.
So let's start off with this, and probably second most exciting. We got a Tremors announcement. So, but
sorry, my audio clipped. I laughed so loud. Okay, anyways, go for it.
So, the first big story of this week is that the teaser trailer for Pixar's new movie Soul came out recently, just about a day ago. And it is a film starring Jamie Foxx, Tina Fey, and Daveed Diggs, with a score, I believe, by Trent Reznor for this one.
Freaking wild.
That's freaking wild.
Yeah.
I'll double check on that in a little bit, but I'm pretty sure that
you're right.
Like Trent Reznor is doing the score for this movie, and that's just like, that's wild.
I mean, that trailer's music was so good.
It was
so freaking good. Yeah.
I could spend a whole 20 minutes just talking about this 1 minute teaser trailer.
I know. I could too. Like it had just such a flavor to it. The way that at least the initial city shots where it kind of sets up like this whole kind of very bustling city, it was very much that Rhapsody in Blue, that classic cartoon Rhapsody with the Rhapsody in Blue background, like very much that, just and as jazz pianos everywhere and just a rhythm to it.
Pixar themselves, like Pixar's always been great.
Yeah.
But they've really stepped up their game as far as like scenery and like environments go. I think since like The Good Dinosaur, they've just like blown it out of the water with like these like landscapes and like landscape shots. They're just gorgeous. And another thing that stood out to me from this teaser trailer immediately, besides just how good the music is, and you got freaking 9 Inch Nails doing the music for this Pixar movie. The other thing that stood out to me was that when they were announcing, like, this is from the studio that brought you this, they very easily could have said, this is Pixar's Soul from the studio that brought you Toy Story and Finding Nemo and Monsters, Inc. They're big titles. From the studio that brought you Cars, because, like, that is a absolute, like, ticket seller right there. They went with from the studio that brought you Inside Out, Up, and Coco, which, for all intents and purposes, at least in my opinion and a lot of the internet's opinion, are 3 of the saddest Pixar movies ever made.
Yep.
They're just soul crushers. And so right off the bat, they're saying, hey, You remember these 3 movies that made you cry like a little baby? Here's another one for you.
Yeah.
So
No, totally. And it's not hard to imagine how that gets to be a very, if not sad, a very introspective movie. I mean, it seemed like it reminded me a lot of Inside Out.
Yes.
With the time I spent watching it. So
we already joked. There's always that like Pixar joke of like, the meme where it's like, what if toys had souls? What if fish had souls? What if monsters had souls? What if dinosaurs had souls? Then you had Inside Out. What if feelings had souls? Coco. What if the dead had souls? And now we're at what if souls had souls? Like, so the meme has finally come full circle. What if souls had souls? So, the other thing, I have a tendency, right? And I'm sure that this is a very relatable topic to a lot of people. When you get introduced to something new that you've never heard of before, like, wow, I've never heard of that. That's crazy. And it's introduced to you and you're like, wow, that's new. What is that all about? And then all of a sudden it just starts popping up everywhere. You don't hear the end of it. You introduced to me last week, like right after the show, after we finished our show, you introduced me to Clipping, which is a experimental rap group featuring Daveed Diggs.
Yeah.
And beforehand, like I knew Hamilton. I didn't recognize the name Daveed Diggs. But all of a sudden you say that. I'm like, so I start listening to Clipping. I've done nothing but listen to their music for the last week.
Yep.
Thanks a lot.
No problem.
First of all.
Go listen to Clipping. Clipping is so freaking good. Every album is good. Go ahead.
So you introduce them to me. I check out the Pixar Soul trailer. Daveed Diggs is the co-star. I'm like, what? I go into the Reddit comment section. One of the first comments is just, I want to see a Clipping track in this movie. And I'm like, well, I'm never going to hear the end of Clipping. They're now going to be the next big thing because you introduced me to them. And now everyone's going to start talking about them.
Yeah. Daveed Diggs has had a fascinating history in entertainment. He was in an independent film that I don't recall the name of. I need to go check it out. I heard it's really good. But I really want to watch that. Like I said, I've been following Clipping for many years now. And then also he was in Hamilton. So like, yeah, he's pretty incredible. He's an incredible talent. And, I'm so excited to see him in it's interesting because it's animated. People don't usually have breakout performances in animated movies, but potentially I could see this being at least it's something that is more mainstream that he's able to get to be a part of. Obviously Hamilton is totally that, but movie wise.
Right. Yeah. Like I think Pixar's big. They get some big names for Pixar.
Oh, totally.
I mean, is he going to get like probably a big breakout in the film industry? I don't know. Probably not. But at least as a voice actor, it shows like, hey, this is a name. And when he's one of the top 3 billed voices of the movie, there's like, that's
just
pretty big.
Put money in his hand. That's what
exactly.
I'm saying. Paid Daveed Diggs.
He deserves it.
Yeah.
Please listen to Clipping. Please listen to Clipping.
Yes.
Listen to their album. There Existed an Addiction to Blood. It is fantastic. Especially if you like horrorcore type experimental rap music.
Yes.
They're just fantastic. We are now the hip hop podcast.
Yeah. Oh yeah. 2 20-year-old white guys talking about hip hop. That's right. We are one of 20 new podcasts where all of this is happening.
We're now moving on to Joji. New music from Joji.
I, for one, think Machine Gun Kelly. Okay, no, anyways. Okay. So yeah, I love hip hop, but
we're not going to be that.
We're not going to be that podcast because
no,
I don't want to be that podcast.
I'm good.
No one wants to hear me talk about that. Okay.
But the point is, this was a fantastic little teaser. Especially compared to the next movie trailer we're going to talk about, there's still an area of intrigue and mystery about what is going on. Like if you don't look up the plot, it's very like you don't know exactly what's going on. Like I know for a fact that like Jamie Foxx is playing the main character who's an aspiring jazz drummer, and he accidentally gets his soul transferred out of his body and meets another soul and things like that. But by watching the trailer, it's like none of that is like entirely clear. Like
it's a good
it's a good trailer that is exactly what it's meant to be. Not like spoiling the whole movie. It's teasing you with what this movie is going to be. And I'm sure there'll be another more official trailer that'll show off more. But this was a fantastic little teaser. Now, as for the next trailer, I can't say the same thing for that.
Yeah, I actually had that same thought too. Same thought that you had. I was like, man, it feels like they're maybe showing quite a bit.
So the trailer in question we're talking about, so we're not leaving people like in the dark. Want to spread some visibility to this movie.
Gosh dang it. Go on.
This is the Invisible Man trailer.
Yeah.
And I wish the plot had been a little less visible during this trailer.
That trailer, there were some certain scenes in that trailer that I thought looked pretty rad. But yeah, like overall, like it felt a little like, all right, you could have maybe made this trailer half the length.
Yeah, literally. I was going to say, like, this is a fantastic trailer if you only watch the first like minute of the trailer. It is
like even the acting they choose to show off, where she's like acting crazy. I thought like, and I love her as an actress.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know her name off the top of my head.
I think it's Elizabeth Moss.
Yes, she's incredible. Loved her in Mad Men and Handmaid's Tale, all that jazz. But regardless, it was like, why did you choose to show this? Like the most like cliche, like I'm crazy.
Yeah. It like spoiled all like the big plot points. I feel like. At least I literally feel like I'd watched the entire movie through that trailer, like to the point where it's like they showed off like where these like big characters are probably gonna die, like showing off like the mystique and intrigue and those plot points of like he's invisible, he turned himself invisible, he's not.
Right, huh? They did literally say that.
But like the effects of the Invisible Man, like especially in the first minute, were really good. Like when she's outside and it's like cold and you see her breath, and then like right behind her, like someone's breathing and you see their breath, but there's no one there because it's an invisible man. So it's totally the prime movie to just be like, we're gonna do some sick practical effects, practical, keep it practical, and yet they still like show a CGI invisible dude in this trailer. Yeah,
which I know that sounds whatever. Like when this comes out, they might do it well, but it was something where it was like, really, like you're going to give up your, like, that's the core concept of this, is the psychological horror part, and they literally in this trailer take that away from the movie.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're gonna be talking a little bit about Scorsese's thoughts on focus groups and how that they might be impacting cinema. This was one of those things where I thought, this seems like something that was focus tested, and someone said, is it even a guy? And they said, well, I guess we got to tell them in the trailer, otherwise they're not going to see this movie.
I know. It's just that this was originally going to be a Dark Universe movie, which if the mummy hadn't crashed and burned, the Invisible Man was supposed to be a Dark Universe movie. Whether it was this exact kind of movie or something different, I'm not sure, but this would have originally been in that universe, and it would have been starring my favorite actor in the whole world, Johnny Depp.
So why do you love this actor so much?
I don't want to hear the words Johnny Depp has been cast ever again unless it ends with Into the Ocean. Never again. Johnny Depp has been cast off of a cliff. That's what I want to hear. It's just the issues I have with Will Smith, like I talked about in Gemini Man, where it feels like he just picks bottom of the barrel movies and just plays the same role and not particularly well, applies directly to Johnny Depp. He is an actor that I think I mentioned before, like the last movie I saw him in that like actually impressed me was Black Mass. Yeah. And that was a movie where the only thing going for it was that Johnny Depp actually cared and gave in a decent performance, and the rest of the movie was like kind of a mess.
I have a thought. Is Johnny Depp to acting what Tim Burton is to directing?
Oh God.
Like, because
there's too many layers.
Like they both seem like one-trick ponies that just have gotten very stale.
Maybe that's the reason that Tim Burton was so busy trying to cuck himself, like with his wife and Johnny Depp.
Yikes.
like casting Johnny
Yeah.
Depp and his wife as romantic partners in every movie. Perhaps that's why that Tim Burton was so obsessed with this cuck fetish of his.
You know what? We can't talk about Tim Burton if we don't we have to put a black and white filter on for us to actually be able to talk about Tim Burton.
I'm not putting a black and white filter on this.
And then we need to go to Hot Topic and like buy out the store and just like put it on the wall, and then we can talk about Tim Burton.
You sound like my bloody sister. I hope my sister doesn't listen to this. I'm gonna be in so much trouble. But
anyways, so
oh my gosh.
Yeah, I mean that's The Invisible Man. That
The
is
Invisible
Martin
Man.
Scorsese. That is
Martin Scorsese's
Well,
Invisible Man.
that might be good.
That might be good. I guess I want to be cautiously optimistic on this, but I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Here's the big story, the big exciting blockbuster announcement of maybe the entire month.
Hit us.
John Heder has joined Tremors 7, Island Fury. What do you have to say on this one, Luke?
Absolutely nothing.
Okay, so
Nothing at
talking
all.
about Scorsese. No, I don't want to go on yet. I want to give a shout out to my brother. Whenever you do watch this, bro, this one's for you. So,
He's the only person alive who continues to watch Tremors.
honestly, he might be the only person. My brother has the most obsessive fandoms. He watches every single Tremors movie, and when I tell him this announcement on Monday, he's probably going to flip a lid.
Bless his soul.
Bless his soul. He is not a fan of the Hellraiser movies, but he watches every single one whenever one comes out, including the crappy ones that come out a couple years ago.
Anti-Hellraiser, pro Tremors.
Yeah.
All right.
Anti-Hellraiser,
All
pro
right,
Tremors, but he'll watch every single movie
Sick.
in the series, no
Sick.
matter what. Just talk to him. You should come over on Monday when I talk to him on the phone and listen to his reaction when I tell him, hey, they're making a new Tremors movie.
We'll record it.
And his excitement. And then listen to his reaction when I make up that a new Hellraiser movie is coming out. And
It's
watch
like resigned, like I have to do it.
just the pure dread and furious anger that comes from deep within himself as soon as Hellraiser is announced.
Yeah.
It's beautiful. It's a sight of beauty. The only thing he gets angrier about is trying to describe the plot of Halloween 2 by Rob Zombie.
Who among us has not gotten angry while trying to explain the
A Rob Zombie.
Rob Zombie movie period? Yes.
I can describe a Rob Zombie movie. Trailer trash. Legitimately trailer trash. Not like heartwarming trailer trash. Like legitimate You don't get out of my trailer park right now, boy. Get on it. Get. Come on, get. So,
we've talked about Rob Zombie. We've talked about Tim Burton. We've talked about Johnny Depp. We've talked about Tremors. Can we talk about Martin Scorsese for real?
yes, let's talk about Martin Scorsese. Lead the
Awesome.
way.
So the saga has in my opinion come to a close. I don't think it probably actually has, but Martin Scorsese was like, hey, like I think Marvel movies are more thrill rides basically than actual cinema, and he got a lot of heat from it. Bob Iger, massive, probably billionaire Bob Iger, I would imagine. Maybe I'm wrong about that, but decided that he was extremely offended that Martin Scorsese would say such a horrific thing about Marvel films. Anyways, as I have thought more about this, I've been like, okay, I'm starting to see maybe Scorsese has a point here. But then he came out with this opinion piece for the New York Times, which frankly, after reading it, I was like, you know what? Like, it's so good. Like, of course, I should expect Martin Scorsese to be a killer writer, and but this was just one of the most just fascinating and interesting kind of insights into the current, I guess, theater landscape, like modern cinema landscape, and also into just the history of cinema in general. And he really touches on both these things and kind of why he's grown so weary of Marvel movies. And it's it just hit really hard. And there were just some pretty incredible things in here that, but all of this also, he kind of couches in the fact that he's like, look, I'm talking about how large corporations are basically monopolizing cinemas, and at the same time I'm making a movie for Netflix, right? So he kind of is willing to kind of walk both lines there and say, look, these are some issues but still, like, I'm able to make this movie. I'm grateful for it. But I think it's safe to say that streaming and the way that franchise films, the way he describes it, have kind of taken over what people are seeing. Right. I think it's really pertinent to right now. At a time where I've been trying to see Jojo Rabbit for the past like many weeks, and I don't think it's even in Idaho, which I don't think crazy, so. Which I guess shouldn't surprise me. But at the same time, it's like Boise, like maybe Boise has it, but it's like, I don't know. It's disappointing.
Yeah. It's not just like, streaming services and all that, but also like just the lack of availability of like independent and art house theaters, like especially in a lot of places. Mm-hmm. Boston, I know, has 2 or 3. I don't know how many there are in the state of Idaho. Like, at least nearby, you'd have to probably go like a few hours out of our town to be able to go see like independent movies. It's just not accessible. I think legitimately, from what I read, I could be wrong, Scorsese's hometown only has 3 theaters that are showing The Irishman. Like home city, hometown. Like there are legitimately only like 3 theaters that'll even show it in like where Scorsese's from. Yeah. I could be wrong on that. I'm not sure. I read something about that, but it's like, it's just so hard to be able to watch independent movies like this, especially in an era where it's like these blockbusters, you get blockbusters at every theater, but like if you want to go see a movie like this, you have to go way out of town and go way out because it's just so hard to come by and so inaccessible. And I think it's also relevant because like just the way streaming services is, we were so determined to go see The Irishman this week. Yeah. And talk about it.
We were really determined. We're ready. Mm-hmm.
And because it said released November 1st, but that's just at, what do you know, independent art house theaters, like select theaters that'll show that movie, that probably the closest one to us is like 4 or 5 hours away. Yeah. So. Yep. It's not releasing on Netflix until the 27th, I believe, right, or sometime within that week.
Yeah, and so, it kind of made things a little bit complicated as far as we ended up deciding on doing another movie, which we will get into in a little bit. But I want to, kind of talk a little bit more about this because it is something that I think the core thing that he points out is that there are fewer independent cinemas than there ever have been, which already that's a big deal. But then he goes on to say, like, look, people are saying, oh, well, people are just going to see the movies they want to see. But the truth is, and I don't know why I hadn't thought of this, but it's like, no, they're only watching the movies that they are being shown, right? Like if you go to any, traditional town, you're not going to be able to watch The Lighthouse. You're not going to be able to watch Jojo Rabbit. You're not going to be able to watch The Irishman. You're going to be able to watch, whatever the latest Maleficent or, it's, and and he makes the point here of saying like, look, like there's a lot of craft in these movies. And he talks about how like he sees even some of Hitchcock's films as him almost being his own franchise. How at the time they would go to these theaters to see Hitchcock's movies. Every time they would be packed. And the way he describes the relationship between the audience and the screen is very similar to how you would describe it today with our relationship with Marvel movies. But the difference is where that place is coming from. And I think the biggest thing that he said that really, I think, hit home, like this is why he's able to talk about this stuff this way, was, and I've been trying to find the exact quote this entire time, but okay, here we go. So he's talking about cinema in general, movies in general, about when he started making movies and when he and the other people were starting to make movies. He says, it was about confronting the unexpected on the screen and in the life it dramatized and interpreted, and enlarging the sense of what was possible in that art form. And that was the key for us. It was an art form. There was some debate about that at the time. So we stood up for cinema as an equal to literature or music or dance. And we came to understand that the art could be found in many different places and in just as many forms. That idea of him coming up when they were fighting to just be relevant as an art form is a pretty bold thing, a pretty insane thing, right? And yet I think that it says a lot about maybe why he harbors some animosity about now these large corporations kind of pulling it back into just being about this pure entertainment. And I guess I appreciate what he was saying, because it's kind of pointing out, like, look, like, we need to be wary of how much we keep committing to all these huge corporations monopolizing entertainment, and in a way taking it really back to something that is really a for-profit thing, which it's always for profit. Artists need to get paid.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I just really respected his ideas here. Yeah. Anyways, I don't know. Those are my thoughts.
It's an interesting thought, especially. But don't you feel bad for like all the like negativity that Scorsese has thrown onto someone as poor as like poor old Disney?
Yeah.
Like poor old.
How are they ever going to recover?
How is this multi-billion-dollar company going to?
I go to the theater next time, when Star Wars, Marvel, and like when those continue to be the highest-grossing films for the next 10 years. You know what? I'm gonna be thinking about, Martin Scorsese. You know what?
Just
he just
unfair.
sucks. How
just
dare he?
Unfair.
How dare he?
Literally.
Yeah. Look.
You sound like every Twitter comment I've ever read about this whole story.
Are you trying to tell me that The Godfather even compares to the artistic mastery of Black Panther? Like, look, Black Panther's the best movie I think that they have made, genuinely. But in the same token, it's like, look, like, these are apples and oranges. In terms
all
of
Scorsese does is make gangster movies starring Al Pacino. It's exactly the same every movie. When is the last time Scorsese has done something as creative as a movie like Black Panther or a movie like Avengers Endgame?
You're right.
I don't want to talk about.
So I guess just to kind of close on my thoughts on this, I don't want to just totally bash on Marvel. For me, it's mainly the people who feel the need to come to the aid of these of this multi-billion-dollar corporation, and is like now heralding its own streaming service that's going to only make this a worse situation. I guess it's just something where I respect, and he even goes in to say this. And I agree. There is a lot of talent that goes behind Marvel's movies, and I agree with that. But there was recently a great microcosm, I think, of my issues with Marvel's movies. There was a director recently who I don't remember I think she was directing Captain Marvel originally. She was the original director for it, and was pulled and stepped away from the project because Disney said, "We'll take care of the fight scenes. We'll take care of the action scenes." And she was like, no. But it's a thing where they have this basically a style guide for Marvel. And so every time I see a Marvel movie, he talks about it a lot here. There's a lack of consequence to the stories, because at the end and that's inherent to comic books, which is fine. But where it's like, okay, there's going to be, maybe some shifting, but at the end it all comes to the same place. Like that's core to comics. But to see it in a movie format, you go in and there are some stakes, but those stakes never feel that big. There's a reason why Endgame didn't shake the world to its core for years on end. It's because you watched it and you went like, that's crazy, but let's see how they bring them back, because they're going to come back, and I think that's disappointing. But anyways, those are my thoughts on Marvel. I wanted to get it out a little bit.
We're going to name this episode the Martin Scorsese Marvel episode of the Red Carpet Podcast, because we have about 15 minutes to talk about Dolemite.
I got on a high horse.
Let's go right into it. Let's get right into it and break down the movie.
Yeah.
I mean, besides just like entertainment, I don't know what I want to say on this exactly.
Yeah.
So I'm figuring this one out like on the fly.
Well,
introduce the movie for us real quick.
So we saw the incredible movie, also on streaming services. So we're hypocrites, but we thought it would be appropriate.
I think it was appropriate, since we didn't get to do The Irishman, to do a different streaming service Netflix film.
Yes. But I think also, a return of an incredible talent, because we have Eddie Murphy in Dolemite Is My Name. And Eddie Murphy is playing Rudy Ray Moore. It's directed by Craig Brewer, and it has a stacked supporting cast. Just stacked. I was like, usually I make a list to make sure, I don't forget anyone, but I was like, come on. So we have, let me get back in here. We have Eddie Murphy, obviously. And then we have Wesley Snipes, Keegan-Michael Key, Craig Robinson, Mike Epps, Titus Burgess, Divine Joy Randolph, Snoop Dogg, T.I. It's
loaded.
Fantastic.
It's a loaded
and
cast.
They all are brilliant. It's a yes. Anyways,
I said last week that The Peanut Butter Falcon was probably one of the most heartwarming movie experiences I've seen in a while. This, in the same vein, this might have been just one of the most fun movie experiences I've had in a while. If Peanut Butter Falcon was fun in the sense that it was just a heartwarming film, this was just straight up fun, you know? Like, there were times we're just sitting there, and like I mentioned, this is a movie about Rudy Ray Moore, who created a character known as Dolemite, and the whole appeal with Dolemite was just this crude, rude, vulgar, dirty comedy.
Yeah,
like stuff
incredible
we
stuff.
cannot repeat on this podcast if I want to graduate from BYU, Idaho.
Yeah.
But it's just the most vulgar comedy possible.
Yeah.
And there's just moments where he says something and it's just so crude and ridiculous that we just looked at each other and started losing our minds. Just like, he did not just say that.
Yeah.
Or they did not just do that. Like, there is a sex scene in this movie that is just ridiculous.
I mean, it's such a good scene, though.
It's so funny.
It's so good. Like, it was one of those things where I'm like, well, I'm glad me and you are the only people in the room having to watch this, because it would be very uncomfortable otherwise. But at the same time, the way it was done, it was a sex scene about sex scenes. And I thought that was really great.
Right.
It was very funny. Yeah.
It was just such a fantastic scene. And I mean, I don't want to spoil the movie.
No.
But it's just a crazy, ridiculous.
Yeah, so it's based on a true story.
Yes.
And the premise is wild, and everything that kind of happens in it. I had never heard this story. I had known that Dolemite was a movie that existed, but that was about all. But learning about that information, some of the just background behind it was pretty incredible. And Eddie Murphy's portrayal of Rudy Ray Moore is maybe my favorite acting of the year.
It was really good.
It's so good. Like, he is chewing up scenery in a way that not a lot of actors do these days.
Eddie Murphy, like, what a return to form for Eddie Murphy. I don't think he had been in a movie that was like well regarded and like in at least like a decade. Yeah. And so seeing this movie and just seeing Eddie Murphy, I can say it like, Eddie Murphy is back, like, in form in this movie, and he's just a fantastic, hilarious performance from him, and an absolutely, like, heartfelt performance as well. I don't want to say heartfelt and heartwarming too much, because we said that a lot during the last movie.
Yeah.
But it's just the generosity and, like, care that he showed in his performance, like, playing Rudy Ray Moore, was just outstanding. The whole movie focuses on this character that wants to be famous, right?
Yeah.
He wants to be famous, and he creates this character that gains him popularity. And one of the things that's great about this movie is that you expect, like, the ball to drop at some point, and just everything to come crashing down. And besides, like, one little moment that there's like dips, but there's never that huge, like, crazy second act dip where, like, everything, like, falls apart.
Yep.
And he has to accept it. It's like a very just fun, happy movie. Like, besides those minor dips, like where he's trying to figure out how to get his film distributed.
Yeah.
And it's, what am I trying to say here? It is a movie that just focuses, like, the theme of this movie. Like, when you come up with, like, theme statements and, like, what is the theme of this movie? I think this one hits it home very strong. The theme and the idea that you can do whatever you want if you set your mind to it. Like, don't let anyone tell you that you can't do it.
And I think especially, I mean, this is a movie that is all about the idea of minority groups coming up against these huge powers, right? Like, the powers of, like, huge production companies.
Disney.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. But like, literally going up against these powers in, different ways, and very empowering. And it's exceptional to see it. It's exceptional also to see that, like when there is an incredible scene that, without getting into it too much, between Rudy Ray Moore, Eddie Murphy's character, and this executive, where he basically says, "I don't want you to do to me what you did to Chuck Berry," which is an incredible thing to talk about.
Yeah.
Because if anybody hasn't taken the chance, they should go and look into the ways that that basically white production companies would have continued to, and especially did in the past, profit and basically take money away from black artists, whether that be dance routines on like shows back in the day, or like, it's a whole past that is really exceptional. And so it felt liberating in that way of like, this feels like a movie that is addressed at like, no, we're going to go in on this. And like, and every time where they say like, okay, let's make it more like this, or he takes the hard left, he just keeps taking the option that is the most creatively his, and the most, he's like, no, I got to be true to what, to what he thinks that his audience wants. And I think it's exceptional.
It is.
Yeah. Great movie. Anyway,
it's just a great, fun, hilarious movie, but you have to go in understanding, especially because like, I'm certain a lot of this audience is LDS, because this is promoted to a lot of like my BYUI friends.
True,
you have to go in understanding this is a very hard R-rated movie. Like this is a vulgar film.
Yep.
Like this is a movie focusing on a comedian who focuses on dirty humor, and so the humor in this movie is very, very dirty. Like, I can't repeat the joke, so you can't get any idea. But if you look up Rudy Ray Moore, or just look up Dolemite, you'll probably get a taste of like.
Yeah, I mean, he like I was talking about it with someone who we checked some of this equipment out from, and basically it was like, you should watch this. Like, it's vulgar, but it's also kind of a movie about vulgarity and about how we see it. And so I thought it worked just stellarly. Like, it's just I think another aspect of this that I just gotta say, which goes into, I think, the vulgarity a little bit, maybe not so much the vulgarity, but the how good the writing is in this movie, how good the cinematography is in this movie, just the style this movie has is so thick and rich.
The costume design too, like with those Dolemite outfits, and like the Dolemite outfits and like the other like comedians and what they're wearing, like just the costume and makeup, like the cinematography too is just really, really good. It's just
all harkening back, and
it's such a bright, colorful movie, which I think reflects the mood of the film, which is just a fun, feel good, although kind of vulgar movie. You know?
And I think part of that vulgarity is you kind of see it in the song that he performs with, is it Lady Bird? Is that
Lady B?
Lady B, excuse me. Lady Reed.
We
all got
Lady
it wrong.
B.
Lady B, Lady Bird. We're thinking of
She mentioned something about like.
Yeah.
No, it's because I think her stage name in the movie was Queen Bee or something.
I think it was, anyway, whatever.
Something like that.
But the point is like there is a scene in there where they are like singing this horrifically raunchy song, which is hilarious. But the reason it's so funny is because it's very obviously a satire of like old white country music. And so it was just it's so good. But and going along, just the rhythm of the way that things are spoken, the way he talks in Eddie Murphy, the way he talks in this, the rhythm he has in it, where he is just constantly just hitting these just one-liners.
Yeah.
You come away just like thinking in one-liners.
And movies are embellished, right?
Oh, of course.
All films are embellished. Like, I doubt. I mean, I could be wrong. I doubt, because they said, that's my cousin's car you just blew up. I doubt that it was legitimately like he didn't know the car was going to be blown up.
Yeah.
I could be wrong. Maybe it was, and it was a big thing.
Yeah.
Or that the writer didn't know that they were going to be like crazy comedic with the sex scene in the movie, you know?
Right.
But what they do, what they do.
Comedy! We are comedians! That's right. See our special called Triggered on Netflix. We're going to talk about poop and pee and things that the liberals don't want us to talk about.
Oh my gosh. What was I trying to say? What the movie does do at the end, they talk about like in like an epilogue type like end credits deal, like what happened with Rudy Ray Moore, that he continued to do comedy, that he made more movies. So like that in and of itself shows like, hey, this character was told this is too much, you can't do this, give up, like go do something else. And it's like, then he, like, after being told this won't work, it's not going to work, this isn't going to happen, it's too much, like he managed to make a movie and then make like more, like 3 or 4 more movies. But then the other thing, like when you're talking about like the rhythm and the way he spoke, is that when other black youth, right? Mm-hmm. discovered Rudy Ray more and listened to him, it helped like spark like the rap scene, and so he's referred to as like the godfather or the grandfather of rap, right?
Yep. And from the beginning, I didn't even know anything about the story, and yet when he started, I was like, sounds a lot like rap and hip hop, and I was like, I don't know. I would imagine that. It kind of makes it clear in the movie that his style of comedy had roots further back, right? That it was considered like, oh, you're taking the old jokes and you're bringing them new, making them new again. But I was like, man, this feels a lot like rap and hip hop. And then the more you get into it, the more you're like, oh, like, okay, no, like this is, and they start making it more and more clear that that's the case until finally the end, they just say it. And it's like, wow, all right, that checks out.
Yeah.
In fact, the entire time while we were watching, I was like, oh, that was sampled in this, that line is sampled.
Yeah,
in this
there was
rap
that one
song.
line you said. He
There's
said something. He said something like really like out there.
Totally.
And you're like, I think that's in a song. Like that's one of his famous lines because that was used in a song.
Yeah.
No. And I remember that, and it's like really was like he helped influence it. So like even just there, talking the idea of like never give up on like your goals or like giving up. Like dude wanted to be famous. He became a popular comedian, managed to create multiple movies that like from what I read, the Dolemite movies never really like reached a mainstream appeal of like white audiences.
Yeah, I mean, they make it clear in the movie where all the critics are like, this is putrid trash or whatever, and it's like, come on,
trash,
whatever they say, I don't know.
Yeah, but he managed to do that, and then he sparked a whole like, I don't know what the right word is. I don't know, movement, genre.
Yeah, I mean, like, definitely probably popularized that genre.
He popularized a whole
another
genre,
and that whole genre is just
and just
incredible.
hip hop in general. Like he
and hip,
like,
yes,
helped
and then
spark
literally
the
the
genre,
music,
like
both
the hip hop
movies
genre.
and music, like
yeah.
Oh gosh,
So,
I wish I mean, this goes to show, right, why this movie needs to be made, because like I would have never known this guy existed,
right?
And it sucks that I wouldn't, but it's so good that I think, one, it's good the story is told, period. Two, I think it's great that the story is told in this time, which is a time where a lot of, I think, with good reason, a lot of minority groups are wanting to try and grab onto some sense of feeling empowerment. At a time where, frankly, between government and just systemic issues, it's all kind of coming to light that, at least maybe it's only for us that it's coming to light, and they're like, oh, we've known all along. But, but it's just, I appreciate what this movie is trying to do, and what I think it's just successful at it.
I agree.
It's awesome.
I definitely agree. And like, I'm gonna get like the Dolemite song stuck in my head as well. Just thinking like when they created the theme song, like Dolemite.
Yeah.
There's just so much good stuff that comes out of this movie. Like, and it's just, if you're willing.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, if you're willing to put up with like that kind of humor and it's not going to scare you off immediately, coward, it's just such a fantastically enjoyable movie.
And very positive. Like, and not just positive in the like, oh, it's happy, but like really good message. I think.
Yeah. And as a guy that obsesses over like negative, sad movies, like, and movies that like leave you just feeling like crushed at the end, like I am an avid viewer of just the most gut-wrenchingly sad animes possible, right? If it's a show that's going to make me cry by the end of it, like Your Lie in April, I'm going to watch it and I'm going to cry while watching it. And so just watching a movie like this, where it's just such a positive message and just a happy movie overall, like it's just a fresh of breath air for me that I don't have to wallow in my own pity, like watching movies, Going back to Joker, which is just a outrageously upsetting
movie. It's so funny because it feels like every movie maybe it's not. It is not this. Let me be clear. It's not this.
It's not Joker.
It feels like every movie since I've seen Joker has felt like in some way a response to the sheer negativity of Joker. I think it's just because of how sheerly negative it is.
Mm-hmm.
But it's really good to see some of these movies where you have, I mean, both these past movies have been about groups that are marginalized winning over systems that are trying to oppress them or control them in some way. And I think that's and it's not doing that in the like grandiose, like really on the nose sense. I mean, it's kind of on the nose, but it's real. Like it's in real sense, there are real systemic issues that are being challenged, and there are being victories over. And I think that is always empowering to see. Yeah, I mean, I want to see more movies like this.
Yeah, I want to see more movies like this, and I want to see this movie. Like, if anything, it's made me want to see more Eddie Murphy. Like, after years of being like, like if I were to hear like Eddie Murphy's new movie, I'd be like, whatever, pass. But this makes me want to see Eddie Murphy again, like more Eddie Murphy pictures.
Just the feel of this movie, man. Just the oh gosh, it's so electric. Like it is just like you just feel the rhythm of this movie inside of you, and it's a really unique feeling that I've not felt before. It was awesome.
Right. I can't think of like much to say against the movie either. It's like,
yeah,
I'm trying to think of like if there's any like criticism I have, but it's like there's not
it's
much,
so genuine that I don't know. Like, I mean, because even the criticism that I would normally have, like when you have a lot of like female nudity in a movie and not a lot of male nudity, I think like not to be like, not like, oh, it has to be equal. That would be kind of ridiculous. But at the same time, like in Hollywood, I'm very conscientious of the way that women are portrayed in movies, and I think it's fair. But even that, like it was a part of that movie's creation, and it felt like it was done purposefully. It felt like it was used with purpose. Yeah, I mean, like that's the whole thing, right? Like any issue I'd normally levy towards, like, oh, you know, like didn't need to have all these naked women or whatever. Like, it's like this movie kind of did. It kind of everything when they employed, whether it be a sex scene or strippers or what have you. Like, and I'm saying this as someone who normally is very critical of the use of this stuff in movies. Not inherent to its existence, but just how it's employed sometimes can be bad. This, I thought, employed it really well. So it's like, all right, yeah, I don't really have much to say.
Yeah, I agree on that. So this is like, I'm trying to think where I want to place this movie, because there's not much I can think of that like outright stands out as like, this held the movie back, because nothing really held the movie back.
Yeah.
So like, I'm trying to think of where I want to place it, like on a scale of 1 to 10. So if you have an idea, like start us off. Where do you rate this movie?
Yes. So I thought quite a bit about this. And I don't think it's like masterpiece status, because I don't think it's trying to be that. But I'd say, I don't think it's going to redefine the cinema landscape, but between Eddie Murphy's performance, just the craft of this movie is so freaking good. And the story is amazing. I'm going to give it an 8. And I've been giving a lot of movies high scores and thinking like, oh, but it's just like, there's been a lot of good movies we've had the pleasure of seeing.
Yeah.
And I think this is a great movie.
Yeah, I was thinking the same area, like 8, but then I'm thinking like, you know, like with a movie like Peanut Butter Falcon, it's like I said that I think the pacing held it back from being like a 9. Then I bumped Joker down like from a 9 to an 8. So I don't know. I feel like, and I may change my opinion, like maybe on a rewatch or further thinking about it, but I'm definitely giving this, for now, I think I'm going to land on an 8.5 kind of score. But you know, I should rewatch this, because part of my issue, and it might be evident like when listening to this, part of my issue is that I went into this movie and then forgot to really analyze and review it, right? And because I was just enjoying the film so much.
And the similar thing happened to me with Peanut Butter Falcon. The only thing that I think, the only reason I think Peanut Butter Falcon for me got a 9, I think the difference between an 8 and a 9, I think, is very much a personal preference thing. And that was mainly just because I got so emotionally invested in those characters in Peanut Butter Falcon. And there's so many characters in this that getting super invested in one is hard. Although what they do with those characters are also great. I'm in the same boat as you. I think if I watch this again, I could give it a 9. It's so freaking good. It's just such a well-made movie. But yeah,
it is. And it's really funny because I called my parents earlier today and told them like, hey, we're going to be reviewing Dolemite. And my parents both watched the movie, and my mother let out the biggest groan possible. Just like, oh gosh, because she had just watched this film, and obviously the vulgar humor isn't for her. So your mileage on this movie is probably going to vary depending on like what your sense of humor is.
And I'll say, normally I don't get down with vulgar humor. But this, whatever. I could talk all day about how this references like modern comedy, people saying, oh, you can't say anything anymore. And how this is like them being raunchy and pushing boundaries without being a-holes. Mm-hmm. But long story short, despite the vulgarity, and I'm usually someone who isn't that into that, I thought it was killer. Like, just so good.
Right. So that's what we got to say about Dolemite is my name. So any other like parting thoughts on this before we wrap the show up?
Let's wrap this thing.
Yeah, for sure. So thank you guys so much for watching the movie. Watching the movie.
Thank you for watching this movie.
You should watch the movie, but thank you so much for watching our podcast and listening to us. If you, depending on where you're listening to us, we are available on Anchor.fm and Spotify. We post our shows, our audio show every Saturday. I am like, my head is spinning right now. We post our show on Spotify and Anchor every Saturday, and we have a YouTube show that we post every Wednesday as well. So tune in, not next week, because we're taking a break next week. We're going on a break.
You went like, tune in, not next week.
Not next week. I told you my head is spinning.
Yeah, it's
right
all
now.
right. It's all right.
But we're taking a break next week. I am heading off to Boston that week to film a short documentary that I'm working on. But we'll be back again the week after that to talk about a mystery movie that we haven't decided yet. So we'll figure that out when the time comes. So be sure to look forward to that. We may just decide to do like a throwback episode, or maybe we watch something in theaters, or maybe we'll just let our audience decide, like, hey, you guys should review this. So,
dangerous, but I like it.
Dangerous.
I'm a man of danger.
A man of danger.
All right. Yeah.
All right. So thank you guys for tuning in, and we'll see you guys again in the next episode.